Hi everyone, I'm Grandmaster Magesh Panchanathan, and this is Grandmaster Diaries. This is a small series of YouTube videos that I'm making in which I try to be as candid as possible and open and share my thoughts, my life opinions, and whatever that is. So, today I have a very interesting topic. I think it's very relevant in today's world. Seems to be a huge split or lots of arguments about who is an expert. And of course, this question comes in every single field. So one of the days, me and my friend, also a grandmaster, were having a conversation, and then we started talking about what would it mean, like if I say I'm an expert in the chess field, what exactly does it mean, right? If I give my opinion, will that actually make sense? Do people have to actually listen to it? Are there places where actually my opinion might be wrong? How would people be able to dissect these things, right? So the whole idea came from that. So we're going to start with a small series of examples from chess, where I can give my opinion, and then we can try to see should you listen to it or not listen to it, right? Hopefully, being a grandmaster puts me at that expert point, even though the level of expertise would vary. I think I might qualify a little bit for that. Now, before we jump into any of this, I want to start by first asserting that any expert opinion is going to fall within a spectrum of probability, right? Nothing is 100%. And I want all of us to understand this because this seems to be probably one of the root causes for confusion. Also, in some cases, maybe the experts themselves, when they ascertain it, when they say it a certain way, they kind of project it like 100% fact, and that might be creating confusions too. So, what am I talking about? It's very simple. I can give you a very nice example from a Friends episode. So, this is a sitcom that I watched. A lot of you might have watched. It's one of the characters, Phoebe Buffet, does not believe in evolution, and she challenges Ross, another character who's actually a paleontologist, and she challenges him, saying, evolution is just an opinion, or it's more of an idea. I don't believe in that theory. So then he gets really riled up about it, and he says it's a scientific fact. How can you not believe in it? It's not one of those things that you have an option about choosing or not choosing. It's a scientific fact. The fun thing is, in the end, she gets him by saying, by asking him, did the whole world or the greatest minds in the world not actually think that the world was flat, the earth was flat at some point? And then at some point they were disproven, and then they changed their opinion. And she asked him, are you that arrogant to think that there's not a teeny tiny chance that maybe in years to come there will be a new theory that might say evolution didn't happen in a certain way, or it did not even happen, or something like that, right? And then he does concede, which is fair because there is a teeny tiny chance that can happen, right? And that's, in a funny way, they bring that to light, and I kind of want to start from there, right? All the things that I talk about or anyone else is talking about in their field, to me, is more of a probability. The more the experts concur, the more it goes closer to the actual fact, right? Which is probably closer to 100%. I'm getting closer and closer. I'll never hit 100% closer, right? The reason is, even the simplest thing, for example, like I'm making a video in front of this camera. Is this actually a fact? Well, probably closer and closer to fact, but there are some theories that we live in a simulation. The world is a simulation. We live in a matrix. And some scientists believe in that too. So, again, small chance. I might not be sitting here. I'm just dreaming about it. It's an illusion, right? So, it's a little far-fetched, of course, but the point I'm trying to make is everything is a probability. Yeah? Now, let's jump into our first example. I'm going to start with an endgame. It's much easier to study an endgame and explain an expert opinion because it's more concrete. So let's start with this. White to play. White has three different moves: g3, g4, and king g5. And I'm going to give my expert opinion to say g3 is a winning move. Even though g4 seems to be more natural, where the pawn can go two spaces, I'm going to say g3 is a winning move. If you have studied this endgame, you would know why this is an answer. Or if you can calculate a few moves, you will know why this is an answer. But either ways, even if you don't agree with me or if you're not so sure, I can easily prove this. I'll just play out the moves. Why is g3 going to work? Because I need to time my pawn push. The black king can only go back and forth. So when I actually get to g6, I reach this particular position, which is actually a well-known basic theoretical king and pawn in game, where it has to be black's turn for white to win. Because when I go out there, I push. and the king has only one escape square to f7, and when that happens, you go in and then you promote the pawn. So if you don't listen to me and say, wait, I'm going to play g4, you can do that, and you will probably find it very easy to realize what the mistake is. You reach the same position, now it's white's turn to play. And if you go back, I go back, and we just keep dancing around. So the only way to make progress is push. I go here, and we got ourselves a stalemate, because this is the only square where I can save the pawn, and we got ourselves a stalemate, right? So this example is more like you going to an eye doctor and saying, I'm not able to see clearly. What do I do? And the doctor prescribes glasses for you. And you're like, wait, what? Should I trust this expert? It's very easy, even if you don't. The fact is, of course, you went to the doctor, they have a degree, there's a field in it, and all those things are, of course, ways to prove that point. But also, it's easy to prove the point because they can just show you the glasses. They put those things in front of your eyes and take it out, and you see, wait, this looks much clearer, this doesn't, right? So the proof is right there. So you're not confused, you're just very convinced. You come out and say, wait, I got this done, yeah? So there are lots of stuff like this in our day-to-day life, and I want to point that out in this video. But let's move on to the next example. This was one of my endgames. If you want to calculate a little bit, you can pause and try to see what the best continuation is. But we're still in an endgame realm, which means the answers are still concrete, right? So what happened here was I looked at this endgame, I'm up a pawn, and I wanted to trade my pieces, rook and knight, for black's rook and knight, and I would go into a king and pawn endgame. And I had studied over and over in several cases and also seen examples where king and pawn endgame with an extra pawn tends to win a lot more, right? Mostly backed up by data because I've seen enough games. But the point is, there are lots of ways to win here. The computer gives a lot of options. The main move seems to be knight captures d5, which is what I did in the game, and e4, and I take it back. So I lost my rook briefly, but I won it back. And now we reached a king and pawn endgame, and I'm able to save this pawn, and I have this extra, and looks like I'm winning. So most experts might agree up to this point, but there's also more to this. Black seems to have a very active king's path, and if you don't really calculate what is going on, black, in fact, might lose this pawn. And sorry, white, in fact, might lose this pawn, and black will end up having what we call as an outside pass pawn, which might be actually more dangerous for white, and white might lose the game. So to conclude this clearly, a little bit more calculation is required. So what I figured in the game is I can play king e4 after king b5. There is this very important move, king d5, kind of shielding this king from coming in. So my idea, of course, is to move in and then start pushing the pawn like this. But if black takes the pawn, which is what opponent did, I blocked him in. Again, a very common idea once you study a lot of king and pawn in games, to lock him in. And now this pawn queens. My opponent played b6 check, and after king c6, he basically resigned. So coming back to the main position, we have a similar situation here. I think we are closer to the fact, like the last example, we're closer to 100% when I give an opinion saying you should play knight takes d5 here, and you should trust me on that because this is very concrete. But the one thing I've done is I've increased the level of the expertise here, right? So this evaluation can be only clearly given by someone who can calculate at least 6 to 8 moves. Because king to d5, as you noticed, was like not right now. It took like 6 moves into the calculation to play that king to d5 and make sure that white's winning. So you could trust this position, but you need a certain level of expertise, right? In other fields, you can compare it with saying having a doctorate or something above like that, right? The next example, let's move a little bit more into middle game territory, where it becomes a little bit more ambiguous. I was playing black in this position, and now you can see that there are a lot more pieces. I'm not going to be able to easily tell if it's what is right or wrong. The concreteness is going away, and we are getting into more vague territory, right? My opponent played c5 here, and I instantly knew it was a mistake, right? And it's a positional mistake. And this is my opinion, right? I'm a grandmaster. I've played chess for 25 years, more than 25 years. And I'm saying this is wrong. Should you believe me? Well, I can again explain it to you in some sense. But the problem is, in this case, you will not have an immediate feedback, right? That's what I want to point out here. So what am I looking at? I'm looking at your pawn structure. and it tells me that white actually has a doubled pawn on the king side. So the 4 pawns versus 3. And in my experience and in my knowledge, I know that you cannot create a pass pawn when you have a double pawn in the same side like this. So this structure will not create a pass pawn without the help of other pieces. Pawns alone cannot do it. Whereas I have an extra pawn on the queen side compared to their only 3 pawns, right? So I have a majority here and I can create a pass pawn. Again, this is known with more and more studying. And since I can recognize it quickly, I can tell this is not a good idea. What happens when more and more trades happen and simplify? Black actually gains an advantage because black will literally create a pass pawn that white cannot. To prove this to you, I cannot easily do it because if let's say I want to prove this to you, I want to play this game out. There could be 1,000 other mistakes that is happening in this game that I cannot just prove this particular point, right? Maybe I could prove this by taking you to an endgame, removing all the pieces and just having the pass pawn situation and say that this is what I was talking about, and that will come closer to proving it. But the idea is this is still a little bit more vague, where you don't get an instant feedback. And if you don't trust me in a situation like this, the only thing that can happen is you can play more and more games like this and eventually get that feedback. But again, you could get mixed feedback because your games might win or lose 2,000 other reasons. It doesn't have to be this pawn structure, right? So my opponent actually played c5, I played rook e8, bishop e4, and I found this knight to d7. Even though it looks like this pawn's hanging, I have a discovered attack on the queen. So when he took, I took. The queen was under attack. He had to move it. Capture, capture. So I actually reached a better endgame. I went on to win this game. And by now, I already knew I was better, right? So in a sequence of 2 or 3 moves, I'm saying that black has gained advantage and white has done something wrong. And to explain it, I have to use some kind of positional things, which is not like super concrete, like the endgames, right? But even here, I would say experts would converge. If you ask the grandmasters, and let's say if you set the bar as grandmasters for the expertise level, most of them are going to converge and say c5 was bad, the pawn structure I'm talking about actually makes sense, and that's how it is, right? Again, easy to converge. Now let's move on to places where it actually becomes tricky, right? Openings. This is where we are going to run into issues which I think we are facing in today's world. And let's talk about this. So let's say I play a basic opening move, a couple of moves, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. And here, I should give an expert opinion on what I think is the best opening is. There are plenty of lines here. Bishop to b5 is actually the Ruy Lopez. Pawn to d4 lead the Scotch lines. Knight to c3 is going to be 4 knights. Plenty of lines. Bishop to c4 is Italian. So which one is the best? I'm going to show you a different view here so you can see the tool that I use, which is called ChessBase, and it is really cool because we can talk about this with actual data. So let me turn this thing called reference on, and what it does, it brings out all the moves in this particular position. If it can pull it up, let's try it again. Yep, now it's probably doing it. There it is. So what it's basically saying is, in this database, which has millions of games, it's showing every single move and how many times that move was played. Bishop b5, the Ruy Lopez, was played 326,000 odd games, and it goes down. And the hotness here usually shows a trend, how recent people have played it, and you also see the best players. Now here comes the real question. There are 10 different moves maybe that are possible. Carlsen alone has played like 7 or 8 different moves, right? So how could we tell which one is actually the right and wrong way? This to me is a classic situation where in any field, when things are still being explored, there is no conclusion yet. Think of a medical field, maybe you can think of Alzheimer's. People are doing research, right? And doctors are figuring out what medication would work or not work. We don't seem to have an answer to that. So a lot of people are trying so many different things. But again, these are experts within the field who are trying different things. Now, I cannot jump in and say, I'm going to find a new medication for Alzheimer's. I'm going to mix some salt and water or do some random experiments to see what's going to happen, right? Because I don't even know where to start. So the point is, all these different moves are being created by the experts to explore this particular situation, right? And that's why they don't have a concrete answer. So many different possibilities, everything seems okay. A student might come to me and I might suggest Scotch is the best opening for you to play here. Someone else might be saying something else, right? But the point here, even I want to make it clear, is that even in a situation like this, there are about 20 moves that you see here that experts would concur is bad. There is a king e2 move. You definitely don't want to move your king up and, in the middle of the game. There is a knight to h4, which is terrible. Four players are playing knight to h4. You just lose your knight. The queen will just take it. There's knight to g1, where you undevelop your knight. It doesn't make any sense, right? Why would you bring a knight out and then bring it back in? But this is the classic example again. If you play knight to g1, if you don't listen to me, I say, I don't want you to play knight to g1, and you're like, wait, I don't need to listen to you. This is a classic place where so many people are giving so many different opinions. Why is your opinion important? But this particular opinion, we actually have some, convergence between the experts. We are all saying don't do it, right? It's better for you to listen to it because it increases your chance of actually playing better in this position. Can you play knight g1 and win the game? Yes, it's possible. But the chances have gone down. And that's the whole point of this. Even in areas where you think there is confusion, where you say, oh, there are 8 different moves, there's actually a lot of convergence. There are like another 100 moves that we all believe are bad, right? We might not have reached this conclusion yet, and constantly people are trying new moves to figure it out. But that does not mean that this is like an expert is wrong because they can't tell me which move to play. And you can see the difference here, right? So the overall point is that there are areas where experts might not actually agree because it is still being explored. But the question is, who should be exploring it, right? And I answered this briefly. You do not want to, the chances of some random person coming in and saying, you know what, I think h4 here is going to work, I'm going to try it out, is low. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible because anyone can explore this, given that we have computers and engines today. Anyone can explore this, right? But the chances of an expert finding a new good move is a lot higher because they know the nuances of the position. They're like, oh, the knight needs to be here. I need to attack the f7 pawn. I need to do this. I need to do that. What move would make sense? And then I can turn the engine on and with the help of the engine, look through those variations. And that's why the top players keep coming out with brilliant novelties. And it's more chance for them to do that compared to some amateur who's like, I want to find a new move, right? So this is where we are in terms of other fields, right? So if like playing knight g1 is like to me like climate change. Most of the scientists seems to agree that it is a problem, but people seem to want to disagree with that. Now, is it possible that after a few years things might change? The scientific community might figure out that it's not even a thing and then tell you we didn't have to worry about it? Yes, it's possible. But that does not mean that we still have a much better chance to do this by listening to them, right? When we listen to them, our chances are much better with the information that we have today. So when you ask me and I tell you do not play knight g1, I can just tell you with the information that is there today, that is really not the best choice. Yeah. Now tomorrow I might figure out something. I might change my opinion. There might be another grandmaster who will come and figure out. There might be another super GM. There might be a random person who's an amateur also who does it. All of this is still possible. Yeah. But the concurrence has just increased the probability of something being bad. It's all about understanding the probability. Now, a lot of people say, wait, I don't trust the expert. I don't think, the expert is talking about, whatever they're talking about, it's not really something that I'm going to believe in. But let's go back to the main page. And what I want to say is that I can think of a really famous quote by Richard Feynman, the Nobel laureate physicist, where he said people don't even sometimes know what they actually know. And the reason I'm giving this example is because people on a day-to-day life believe in experts all the time. We build our houses with experts. We don't just go with our friends saying, my friend said he could build a house, so let me use that. No, we go with contractors. We make sure they have certification. We make sure that they're following government regulations. We believe in system. We drive a car that has gone through rigorous testing. We won't believe that system otherwise. We're not going to drive 80 miles an hour in a freeway if we don't believe in the system. So what I would like to point out is every single field has a process. Most of the scientific fields have a process, have a way to measure success, like chess. I'm a grandmaster. I played over years. It took me a lot of effort to achieve this, to get here. So whatever I'm saying might have some value. Now, I could totally be wrong. And if I ever say that, listen, I'm a grandmaster, so I have to be right, then I'm probably losing it. But in general, the point is there are some places where I'm going to really say this is how it is, and there are some places I'm going to say this could be a better choice. Either ways, you probably are better equipped when you get an expert's advice, right? So you are following expert advice every day. You trust in the system already. But when you see an opening situation like the one we saw, you're confused. You think, wait, I have 10 different options and 10 experts are saying 10 different things. So probably I could do anything. No. Within those 10 experts, you still have a much better chance, right? And they're all still figuring things out. And that's how humanity is. You cannot have answers to everything instantly. They're working things out, and we are probably going to get more and more answers. And chess is like that. Throughout the years, so many opening trends have changed. We have had openings that were extremely popular are not played in the top anymore. Um, Sicilian Dragon is a great example. People used to play the Sicilian Dragon a lot. Now, no top players play that. The Poison Pawn variation Najdorf is a great example where there was a time when people just didn't want to do it until Bobby Fischer came along and figured out a way to do it. And then people start researching more and they figured out, wait, it's not a bad idea. We could still do it. So the opening is constantly evolving. So experts are not really authorities who are trying to control everything. Everybody can actually find moves and everybody can figure out things. And that's exactly how we make progress, right? Just to sum it up, I want all of you to remember this. If you cannot comprehend or understand something, it does not mean it's wrong, right? You have to put some level of trust in the process because this is the only process we have which has brought us up to this point. We have made progress because of rigorous testing and rigorous, evidence-based kind of work. That's more important. Data is more important, and that's what you want to remember. When an expert is giving you an opinion, think about the background, think about the education, think about everything before you can make a judgment on that. And then based on that, hopefully this helped in ironing some ideas out with the help of chess. Thank you.